The Cardinals have been rolling, but it's a night off on Tuesday as the Rains didn't stay away in Philly. So we took your questions in a live stream on YouTube. Here was that conversation, all coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily Live. Brenden Schaeffer with you. Tuesday night, May 13th, 2025. Cardinals, of course, rained out today, so I thought it would be a good night to do a live stream and anything goes in terms of the topics. So get your thoughts into the live chat. If you have questions, if you have comments, obviously a lot to get to right now with the state of the St. Louis Cardinals and their 9-game winning streak. It's kind of a question of, what is this season ultimately going to end up being about, right? Like, it felt like, okay, come in, it's a transition year. Don't have a lot of expectations. Understand that they're working to develop some certain things. And then here we are, Cardinals win 9 in a row, and it feels like they could be on the cusp of something. So we're going to talk about that more tonight on this edition of the show. I'm going to take a quick moment to post the video live on Twitter. And then we'll be off and running. Really, we are already off and running because I said this was B-Schaeff Daily Live, so we've started. All this will be available, by the way, on Spotify tomorrow, on Apple Podcasts. If you search B-Schaeff Daily on those outlets, you'll be able to find the audio version of this. All right, I see a couple of questions from the very beginning. And again, anything goes. If you want to talk big picture, if you want to talk, immediate stuff, whatever is good with me. There's no game today, so we can just kind of have a little bit of fun with it. Allison asking about McGreevy. Xavier, well, Redbird's just saying what's up. I'm great today. I'm excited to get on here with you guys. Xavier asking about McGreevy for the doubleheader tomorrow. I'm going to double-check this as we're sitting here, but I am pretty sure that's not going to work because, and look, if somebody has reported otherwise, then you can tell me I'm wrong. I think he pitched too recently to be able to pull that off. Checking here for the game logs because I don't think you'd want McGreevy to go on short rest. I think you would want to, even though there'd be that temptation because it's a day. I think he'd be 1 day short on the rest quotient there, and I guess there'd be that temptation. But I think it would be best to keep him on the regular schedule if he's short. He pitched on the 10th of May. Tomorrow is the 14th of May. 11, 12, 13, 3 days rest. He'd be one short. So I don't think you'll see McGreevy tomorrow, but let me know. Tyler is asking if it's even supposed to clear up tomorrow. Yeah, the weather in Philly has evidently not been too favorable. I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know what they would do if it doesn't. Both teams do have the day off Thursday. You'd have to think they'd try to play, but that's obviously, that day off has been a big deal in terms of, the way the Cardinals wanted to approach all of that and the 5-man rotation instead of 6, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I think that's kind of up in the air because I don't know the weather forecast, but I don't know that they'd want to be playing a doubleheader Thursday. I can't imagine they'd make them do that, but there's not another trip to Philly, obviously, too. And the Cardinals have already played him at Busch, so not sure. Time will tell. I'll let MLB figure that stuff out. Samuel, as far as has it been 15 days since he went down, I don't think it matters for the doubleheader. I think that is kind of like an injury where if a guy was injured and he's replacing an injured player, McGreevy could come back up even if it hasn't been 15 days, and it hasn't been. He pitched on May the 4th, the first game of that doubleheader. But the second game of that doubleheader, rather, on Sunday, May the 4th. But he was not the 27th man that day either. He was up legit on the roster, as I'm recalling it. So I don't know the answer to that, but I think they'd be able to put him on there if they wanted to. But you can scrap it because he pitched on the 10th of May, 11, 12, 13. That's only 3 days rest. That's not going to be enough. So I do not think the Cardinals would bring him in on short rest. I would be surprised by that. Allison says, can't wait to hear your take on can the Cardinals carry 3 catchers or one have to go? I don't see any reason that you would have to change anything right now. If it ain't broke, don't fix it is sort of my mantra. And right now you're getting great production from Pedro Pajes behind the plate in terms of the way that he is handling the staff. You're getting good enough production from him offensively. OPS around 650, clutch hits, clutch swings, sacrifice flies. Like, I think he provides enough offensively, and they really like his defense for good reason. Pozo has been a really strong bat. Excuse me. When he's gotten the opportunity, Joel Pozo has been a really solid hitter, over 300 average. I think he's still above 800 for the OPS. And so you're perfectly comfortable with what he's doing. And right now, Ivan Herrera has yet to catch. It is a little bit strange that Ivan Herrera has so many days in a rehab where they're making him catch more games to get him ready, and then he comes up and he doesn't catch. But I also think that kind of coincided with this winning streak where if I'm Ollie Marmol and I want to keep winning as many games as I can, and my pitching staff is obviously performing at a really high rate, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's sort of my mentality. And so I think they'll mix Herrera back into the catcher role eventually. I don't think it's going to be every day. Even at its height, I said at the beginning of the year, you're going to see Pages catch half the games. And that was my take before the Herrera injury. I was telling everybody all spring, like, I know Herrera's coming. I know he's going to be important. He's not going to catch every day. He's not going to catch more than about half the games because I know how much the Cardinals like Pedro Pages and his defense, and you're seeing why. So as much as it is a fair question, and no, they don't have 4 catchers. Wilson Contreras doesn't count. He won't catch an inning for them all year. Not with the emergence of Pozo, where, they're in a situation where you've got another guy that you can lean on. I think you'd like to integrate Herrera back in, and this kind of goes into the big conversation of the season, where are the Cardinals in that retool mode? Are they committed to seeing through the development of certain aspects of their team this year, like was the plan? I think with Gorman, with Walker, like that's still going to be a part of things for sure. But what about Ivan Herrera defensively? Like, is that still a tentpole thing for the Cardinals that they want to make sure to evaluate so that in the future they can say, yes, he is a catcher, or no, he's more of a DH, or we're going to have to move him to first or to outfield or something like that? Is that something the Cardinals are still focused on in 2025 developing in terms of like the way we viewed a transition year or a retool where you're giving runway, right? The buzzword is runway. I wrote for Sports Hub STL today, and you can check that out on their site. I think that's the biggest buzzword of the entire thing, is giving runway. Can they give runway at the catcher position to Herrera, or does it matter? When you're winning 9 in a row, doing it a different way, does it matter? I think it's an interesting question. I think we didn't see a bunch of him defensively at the beginning of the year, so it's kind of hard to make any assessment off of that. But right now it's working the way they're doing it. So I think really the 3 catcher thing is more of a question of, was Pozo a better fit for the roster right now than Luken Baker? And the answer to that to me was yes. Now, if they go back and send Pozo to Memphis at some point when Herrera's ready to catch on a more regular basis, which I think should already be the case, right? He's been activated. He caught in the minors. I don't think that's the issue. If it were, then we could maybe have a different conversation at that point in time, and it could kind of be like the Saggese thing where you could argue they kept him up longer than they would have with the win return because of Brendan Donovan's little issue he had with the rib, and they wanted some extra coverage there at a similar position. Maybe that's all it is with Pozo. I think it's more a factor of if Herrera's going to DH, you have him available for that. You have another catcher in Pozo that can sub in if you needed, if you got into a bind or a pinch. And, oh, by the way, I mean, he's hitting better than Luken Baker was too, so he can be a righty bat off your bench if you really wanted to get creative. So I think right now, and look, in terms of long-term, it's going to look completely different next year. Like 2026 is a long ways away. There's a lot yet to determine about this season before I think that question can be asked. Like, is Pozo going to be here next year? I have no idea. But for right now, no, the 3 catchers is fine, and it's a luxury, more so than like anything that I think should be used as a negative. So Xavier mentioning that I don't think the Marlins closer knows what a closer is supposed to do, evidently blowing a lead to the Cubs, and the Cubs do score 3 in the 9th tonight to win. And that circles me back to a topic I've mentioned on some shows recently. Cardinals fans, do not look at the standings for a while. Don't worry about it. I thought it mattered to an extent when they caught up to the Cubs or within a game, and now it's a game and a half, obviously, because the Cardinals were off today. It'll all level out after tomorrow. The Cubs are going to go on a run, right? Starting with this Marlins series, they're going to win 18 out of 25 games. And the Cardinals can have a really good run, too. Maybe they win 15 out of 25. The Cardinals still lose ground. If you look at who the Cubs are playing coming up, and I'm already including the Marlins series that's going on right now within that, it is jarring how bad the opponents are going to be for Chicago. So don't worry about the standings. Worry about how the Cardinals are playing, because that's going to be indicative, I think, of what's going to end up mattering most in terms of how we evaluate this team. The Cubs will be there. The Cubs get a really easy stretch right now. Like, I can look up their schedule. It starts with the Marlins. They don't play a winning team until the 6th of June. That's the stat. They go Marlins, White Sox, Marlins, Reds, and they're the closest thing to a winning team. Maybe they'll be one by Memorial Day weekend when that series happens. Rockies, we know how bad they are. Reds again, Nationals, Cardinals just saw Washington, and then the Tigers. The Tigers are the first winning team they'll see in that entire stretch. That's June number 6. So don't worry about it right now. Worry about the Cardinals' record, sure. How close they are or aren't to the Cubs, I think, is one of those things that you just have to let it go for the time being, because it's out of the Cardinals' control. And it's still May, so there's time to catch them. But they will lose some ground between now and June 6th. It's inevitable, because the Cubs won't hardly lose a game for a month. It's just the nature of the schedule. The Cardinals got their little turn against Pittsburgh and Washington. Now the Cubs are getting an extended run of a similar ideology in the way that that's going to go. More conversation about whether or not the Cardinals will play tomorrow. Yeah, it's hard to do a split doubleheader with rain in the forecast, but you know what? If it's good early and they can get through a game or part of a game to make sure they at least are through one, like, you do have that off day on Thursday, so if they get through one game, would they play one Thursday? Like, there's a lot of ways that could go. I won't spend too much time speculating about the weather because I have no clue. I'm not even in Philly, so. Ryan wants to know how to get more at-bats for Burley. I think this is a good and fair question, because Burleson had started to come around, and we just haven't seen him as consistently, right? It's only been, 2 games that he's been out. The last game in Washington and the first one in Philly, I believe. But, you look at some of his recent numbers. He had himself a 5-game hitting streak before an 0-for-3 in one of those games against Pittsburgh, the finale on that Wednesday, and then had a 2-for-3 game against Washington. So it's valid to want that for Burleson, but I think it boils back to, like, who are the Cardinals prioritizing? Is it going to be Nolan Gorman? Is it going to still be Jordan Walker? Or is Burleson going to get a little bit of run at some point? And I think you'd start to feed into who's hot, because Burleson could still be in that category of, like, what's the runway look like for him? It's more about, when we think about runway, the poster boys are Walker and Gorman, just because it's been 3+ years for both that you're trying to extract that value from, and you want to kind of find out. Burleson, I think, is viewed as maybe a more steady piece. Like, of the 3, and maybe that's not fair, because I think with Walker, unless you find a really interesting trade, he's still here next year. But of the 3, I think Burleson's got the best chance to be here next year, honestly, because he doesn't have to be an everyday guy to make sense off your bench. I think if it's Gorman and if it's Walker, it's like these guys have to be a part of what you're doing, or maybe it doesn't make as much sense for them to be. And I don't know what either would have in trade value. Like, that's the other part of this. You don't want to just give anybody away. But I think Burleson, it's kind of like they kind of already feel like they know what he is and who he can be. And they'd love to prioritize that, but right now they got to figure out some other stuff about some other guys first. So I think it's a valid question, Ryan. I don't know that there's a great answer to it. You trade Arenado, but guess what? Then you don't win as many games, right? That's what they tried to do before the season began, and they'd have more losses right now if Arenado weren't on the team. I'm convinced of that. They'd have more losses at the end of the season if he spends the half of the season elsewhere and they do trade him. I think right now, if you're the front office, you can't really orchestrate any of those moves. Like, you can't do anything that would fundamentally shift things until you get a better idea of where they are. Maybe it's Flag Day. Maybe it's July, trading deadline period. I don't really know what that looks like, but I think for right now, everything's kind of in a holding pattern until we see, like, what if the Cardinals are 12 games above 500? Are you telling me they're still going to be trading guys like Helsley and Fedde at the deadline? I can't imagine that, but it also might be the right move from a business standpoint. So there's that aspect of it. And then there's what about Arenado? Like, if there's a few teams that would have interest and maybe the Cardinals could get a good deal at the deadline, what's the record got to be for the Cardinals to go to Nolan still and say, hey, this is on the table. Do you want it? And what's the record got to be for Nolan to not want it because they're contending? Like, that's an interesting spot that everybody could find themselves. And we don't know what that's going to play out to be, but I wouldn't say it's completely off the table for Arenado to be dealt if the Cardinals fall out of it. or even if they're kind of stuck in the middle and an opportunity arises, I don't know. And the message that would send to the clubhouse wouldn't be great, but like we're all just kind of floating along in the breeze together right now, wondering the same things. So I'll be really curious to see the way this goes for a lot of guys. But Burleson fits into that, to Ryan's question, because if you did trade a position player, it opens up another spot. And right now they just, there's just not the spots. It's been a weird year in that like you've largely had some pretty good health on both sides of the ball, pitching and hitting. And there just hasn't been the normal attrition. Yeah, you lost Herrera for a month, but then he came back. Mason Wynn had a stint. Gorman had a stint, but everybody's pretty much good to go right now, which means, yeah, you're kind of just finding ways where you can get in where you fit in, sort of vibe. Czar Alexander wants to know if the Cardinals would be a better team long-term with Saggese at second over Gorman. To me, they'd be a better team long-term with Donovan at second. Like, that's the guy that should be their second baseman. He does an admirable job in left field, but I think it's not his best spot. I think second is probably his spot to put him. As far as Saggese goes, I mean, yeah, I think he's going to be part of the future. And I don't know if he's an everyday guy or if he's a guy that's going to be, a 350 at-bats a year kind of guy, or, what it ends up being. But certainly if the bat plays like it did when he was up and he rounds out the rest of his game, I think Saggese could be a really good everyday big league guy, and I'm not going to count him out from being that. They need to see it from Gorman. They need to find out once and for all from Gorman. That's what 2025 is about in some ways. It may end up being about winning. It may end up being like, this is not a retool. The Cardinals are 15 games above 500 because they just keep surging, and everything else has to go on the back burner in terms of development and what all that looks like because we're trying to win. Like, they could take that mentality. I don't think they're there yet, but I know that Oliver Marmol would love to be there because it would allow, him to continue to be aggressive and try to do his job, right? Which he's going to continue to do. But I think it's hard to say, like, could the Cardinals be better today with Saggese up and Gorman down? And yeah, maybe. Is that the best for Saggese's development? Maybe not, because Gorman's not getting everyday playing time. Is it the best for Gorman's development? Does that matter at a certain point? Because you give up on a guy. I don't know. They might. Is there something they could do with Gorman that sends him to Memphis that allows him to unlock something? Is that even a thing? They've done it so many times. Like, why would this time be any different? I don't have an answer to that either. And I don't know if the Cardinals do, because they're like, well, if we're seeing the right things from Walker and Gorman and they're going about their work in a productive way, then, maybe that's all it takes. Maybe that's all we need to see from them, and it's okay to keep rolling them out there. But, what if you get a little bit deeper in it and you're like, it's costing us wins, and Saggese, they're like, if Gorman's down, let's say there's an injury somewhere, random guy gets hurt, and that opens up one spot on the infield. Gorman's playing every day, but he's struggling. Would Saggese come right up and play every day and say, hey, look, right now, this is a way to improve the team. We want to see what Saggese's looking like because Gorman hasn't performed. They could make that decision at some point. So, I mean, these are definitely interesting topics. Samuel mentioning that Paz plays second base too. Very interesting topics to me. And that's why I said from the very beginning, this was going to be one of the most compelling seasons of Cardinals baseball to cover and to talk about and to watch in a while. And I didn't necessarily mean that like, oh, they're going to make the playoffs. I said 83, 84 wins before the year. They're on a pace to maybe even outperform that a little bit. But I knew it would be compelling because whatever the narrative you had crafted in your mind, it's like those things can change and shift and morph throughout a season depending on what we see. Did anyone have Matthew Liberatore coming out and becoming the most, prominent, valuable pitching asset in the organization as a starter? I don't think anybody thought that. Kyle Leahy is on an all-star track. I mean, Herrera is raking like we knew he probably could. And they're basically saying, that's fine for now. We don't need to worry about the catcher stuff. And you're getting Victor Scott II emerging in every way that you could have possibly hoped to see. So it's interesting. Ace Rob wants to know why the offense was bad last year and now seems to be good. They're getting on base. They've been more consistent, better plate approach, I think, collectively. It's not every game that it's a perfect plate approach, but largely it's been pretty good, I think, this year. And you can credit Brant Brown for some of that, but then again, I think he was brought in to resurrect Gorman and Walker's careers, and we haven't seen that happen. So right now, it's hard to kind of put your finger on it, but I think it's just collectively there was a lot of talent on last year's team. Like when we came into this season, the Cardinals changed nothing about their lineup, about their position player group. They didn't add anybody from the outside. Only guy they added was the reliever, Phil Maton. And so it was like, hey, what do you think the Cardinals offense is going to be this year? Well, they were 22nd in runs scored last year. Okay. What do you think is going to happen this year? Same group coming back. They're going to maybe prioritize some of the positions differently. Goldschmidt's gone, so you're going to have another spot open up. Hey, Contreras is going to fill that role. Okay. What kind of offense are they going to be? And we did it in podcasts time after time in February and March. We did it, and I went down the list, and I said, who do you think is going to be bad in this offense? Is Newbar going to be bad, worse than like the 750 OPS he had last year? Well, no. What about Donovan? Well, no. I think he's actually going to be better, and I've been right so far. Contreras? No, he's going to be Contreras. Okay. Arenado? No, he can't be worse than last year, right? He had a down season. He'll probably be better. And we went down the list. Ivan Herrera, yeah, he might be worse. He had like an 8-something OPS last year. Maybe he goes down a little bit. So far, nope. So far, he's been tremendous offensively. It's like, okay, Gorman and Walker, could they be worse? I guess, but they were bad last year, and they've been bad this year offensively. It's the same, but like you're seeing the surge from everybody else collectively. That's how you're getting this offense to do what it's doing. Is it sustainable? Maybe. Because last year I would have said, they underperformed. They're bad with RISP, and they were mediocre overall. But being bad with RISP specifically makes you even worse in the run-scoring category than you should have been based on just your overall numbers. So coming into this season, it's like I think I would peg most of the guys in this lineup to improve compared to last year's numbers. And the ones that don't so far is Gorman and Walker, and it's like, that they're where they were last year, which was rough, but it's rough this year, and so you didn't lose anything compared to last year. Where you've gained is several places in the lineup. So that's kind of my roundabout way of that one. Ralph says to let Herrera be the backup catcher. They need his bat and cannot afford for him to get hurt. Yeah, but if he's the backup catcher, is that the same Ralph as saying he's the everyday DH, which is fine if that is, because I think that's a valuable thing for him to be potentially, but then what do you do with Gorman? What do you do with Burleson, right? If Gorman doesn't figure this out, is there any value in trading him? That's what Micah wants to know, and I don't know the answer to that. It's like almost beyond the Rasmus trade where they trade Colby Rasmus in 11, and there are other aspects that go into that, disagreements with La Russa, all sorts of things. He had some value, though, because he had, not fallen off a cliff necessarily. I don't even really remember offhand what Colby Rasmus's stats were before that trade. 753 OPS. Like, he was perfectly suitable. That's not what you're getting from Gorman. And look, Jordan Walker, I think, is the same thing. Can you have trade value in Jordan Walker? I don't know the answer to that. I would think there'd be some team out there that would go, plenty of years of control, first-round pedigree. But like Gorman had a first-round pedigree too. We haven't seen it play out. Like, not since 3 years ago. So I don't know the answer to that on trade value. I don't think it would be much. Think about the trades they've made in recent years of guys like Tyler O'Neill and those deals where you go, yeah, here we go. Like, it's a trade. He's out of here, but what do we get out of it? Nothing. I mean, I don't know if it's quite to that extent, but I remember when everybody was saying Cardinals should trade a second baseman for a Seattle Mariners starting pitcher. I was like, okay, but it's going to be Brendan Donovan if they do that. It's not going to be Gorman because he's not as valuable as Donovan. And everybody was like, well, you can hit 40 home runs. I'm like, Donovan is the more valuable player. Period. And maybe it was a hot take at the time, but I don't think it was because I don't think the Seattle Mariners thought it was. Otherwise, that trade might have happened. But clearly, they were like, yeah, we're not really interested in what he could be for the arms that we think are very good. And Seattle's kept all those arms. So when you think about it, wasn't a missed opportunity. There was just no opportunity because they didn't trade those guys. If they had been traded elsewhere, we could compare, what could the Cardinals have tried to do? You have to keep in mind what Seattle would have wanted. But those guys were never dealt. So it's really hard to say that anything was missed as far as an opportunity there. Yeah, Jimmy Crooks is on the way too. The bat certainly plays for Crooks. What is he going to be behind the plate when it comes to pitch calling and everything that you got to do as a catcher at the big league level? We'll find out in due time. 763 OPS in Memphis. He's doing just fine this year. So he'll be on the way. And look, that's a next year question. Like, Herrera's probably not catching long term. If you put my feet to the fire, he's probably, whether it's next year in spring, in the offseason, they're going to try him in the outfield, first base, do they string it along for another year or so while Contreras is still your full-time first baseman? And then I thought they would do a little bit more shifting with actually Contreras playing some DH, and that hasn't happened as much. He's been at first for the most part, and so, he's going to be there. But at some point, does that transition happen a couple years down the road where contract only lasts a couple more years anyway? Wilson may have more good years in that bat, though. I'm not, saying the contract has to end his career. But Herrera, could he be on a similar track to eventually end up at first? Yeah, because hitting is what he likes to do, and it's what we like to see him do. So I don't think he has to catch. There's just an inherent value when a guy hits like that and can catch, because you can then have another really good hitter be the DH. It's not that Pages isn't a capable hitter, but he's not DH caliber. Like if you had his numbers at DH, you would be like, well, that's not very good. Yeah, it's a benefit if they could get it out of Herrera, but if they can't, you can stop swimming upstream and just accept what a player is or might be. Redbird Farms asking, would I see the Cardinals adding to the 40-man with Robertson going on the full season IL? And I guess I don't know. Does that mean he's on the 60-day? Because I don't know if I guess that's a thing. But I don't know what the 40-man designation is on that. I don't see him labeled as 60-man on the Cardinals site. So I don't know if they get the benefit of that if he wasn't on the big league roster. I could be totally wrong, but he may still take up a 40-man spot. I don't think he's not on the Major League IL. That would be associated with a different pay scale, right? He'd be getting Major League money all year, and that's not the case. I could be totally off on that. Let me know if I am. But I do know that they put Robertson on the season-long IL today. Yeah, I mean, he got a lot of pitching injuries right now, is the bottom line there. Prieto deserves a look. I think Prieto does deserve a look, and I'd like to see him up later on this season rather than just squander him in Memphis, forever, and then eventually he's in another organization before he gets his chance. Right now, you got to have minor league organizational depth, though, as well, and it's hard to figure out where to put Prieto. Like, he's another guy where the bat plays. Not sure he's a plus defender necessarily, but he can play a couple different spots for you. And again, I think it would take an injury, though. Like right now, yeah, all these guys we could say deserve a look. They got guys on the team that aren't getting a look, and they want to give them a look. So they're not adding to that with guys who aren't on the 40-man either. But yes, I mean, I think Prieto could have a big league bat, and that's been the book on him. I don't know if we're going to see it, though. It's going to take injuries. Hypothetical, Cards are offered a good trade for Arenado today. Best value they've received yet. With where they are in the season currently, do you take it? And again, Arenado has to take it too. And so, is he like, I'm kind of enjoying my teammates right now. I want to see what we can do together. Or does he, and the other thing is there like a contract involved in that too? Does he get an extension basically with the trade? Because that's something that, could supersede he likes his teammates. But if that's a business thing for him and his family, then that probably bakes into it as well. I don't think it, and again, Ryan, your point is the hypothetical that you're asking is if you're offered it, like the Red Sox call you tonight and say, here's the offer out of the blue, because I don't think there's any active talks going on. Do you take it? Well, it's hard to really put myself into that frame of mind because I don't think that's going to happen. Like the Red Sox are the one team that would maybe make some sense, and they have kind of said, we're trying to figure this out internally for now. And so I would say probably not, but it depends. Is it the best because it eats the most money and the Cardinals don't have to worry about eating the money? Or is it the best because instead of it would have been with Houston, they're getting more legitimate prospects instead of just kind of probably not super substantial names coming back? I know it's a hypothetical and I'm kind of taking it very literal, but it's difficult to know without those details ironed out. Javi Baez, a walk-off for his second homer of the game. So much easier to like him when he isn't a Cub anymore. He's been brutal for several years, too, and so it's kind of fun to see him, having that resurgence this year that he's been having. Tyler would say, he would ask me, would a trade package that includes Pages, Gorman, and Helsley be a bad idea this summer? Yes, because you got to think of, who's doing that? What team is needing all of those players? I think if you're trading Helsley, it's to a team that you're trading him by himself, because you're getting a king's ransom for him from a contender that wants him to be their late inning guy. Maybe they have a closer and they'll put him in the eighth. Maybe they don't have a closer and they want him to be their closer. Pages is a guy that could be a Cardinal for a long time, and he's cost controlled. So I don't really know why those names specifically are. It kind of feels like you pulled him out of a hat. I don't think they need to trade Pages. I think they need to have him catching. I don't think Herrera is a future catcher. I don't think he's going to start. He'll never start more than 80 games at catcher for the Cardinals in his career. That would be a surprise to me if he did. Because I think there's always going to be a Pages or somebody else that they're like, yeah, we like his defense better, so Herrera's going to get a DH. He'd be a split-time catcher at most. So that doesn't make sense to me. And the Gorman part, A team trading for Gorman is not probably the same team trading for Helsley. The team trading for Gorman is a team that's looking to give him runway, give him some time, and they're not competing, and so they're going to, throw him out there and see if a change of scenery could help him. So I don't really think that makes sense from that perspective, Tyler, just because I think the names you mentioned they're going to go to different places if you're trading them. Are the Cardinals overpaying for first base? No, I don't think it's a problem at all. Like, look, Contreras' contract is his contract. His numbers offensively are worth, they're not paying him that much. I don't really understand the sentiment, and I know it's out there where people would say it was a bad contract because he didn't stay as a catcher. I just don't really feel that way. I don't agree with it. You're talking about 5 years, $87.5 million was the number on that. 17.5, that's nothing. And, why do we worry that much about what they're paying? Because the payroll is super low anyway. The DeWitts should probably be spending a little more money on this team and eventually hope they'll do so again. But no, I don't think that at all. First base, you want a slugger there, and that's what you pay for. I don't think it's an issue to have Contreras be a first baseman. And defensively, been probably better than you thought he would be. That's how I feel anyway. I knew he would put his full effort into it, but he's been pretty good. Jared is asking why everyone wants to trade Arenado. They're a better team with him on the team. Gorman is toast. Yeah, they'll win more games with Arenado. I've said it since February. I said it since the day they decided they weren't trading him. I said they're going to win more games because of this. Does it kind of cloud the whole premise of the season? Maybe, but not really. It makes it tougher to execute that premise, but also it makes the backside of, you might actually win more games than you thought, a lot more reasonable and feasible, and we're seeing that play out right now. He's helping them win games. So I think people are, and I agree with this question, why do you want to trade Arenado if you're a Cardinals fan? I said in February, it doesn't make sense for you to want this. Other than John Mozeliak said he was trying to do it, and you want him to succeed because he runs your favorite team, and when he fails, it's a way that you could say, hey, Mo failed again, and pile on. Other than that, why would you want to trade Arenado? You'd want him to, you hope and pray he stays. Because if Gorman's your third baseman this year, your offensive production is lesser from that position, and certainly your defense is lesser. So I agree with Jared. I don't know that people want to do it, but I think they know, Jared, that it was a topic, and so they're asking about it because they're like, what if it happens? Which I'm totally aware of and understanding of why y'all would ask that. Why did the people making the schedule allow us to not play any games against the Cubs until June? It's actually till July, isn't it? Or is it June? No, you're right. I was thinking about just the trips to Wrigley. And there's two. It's end of September and July 4th weekend are the only two. But you're right. Late June, they come here. Yep. Every year I complain about where the Cardinals-Cubs games are placed. July 4th weekend is very cool. I'm bummed that I won't be going to Wrigley. I could if I wanted to. I've got other obligations with family during that holiday weekend, but that is going to be a party up there, especially if the Cardinals and Cubs are locked into a close race. But I agree. Although, Micah, it's kind of better. Let me backtrack, because your question specifically is why not until June. I'd rather see a series in late May or June, a series in July, one in August, one in September. That's actually how I'd rather it be. I wish it wasn't the very last weekend of September, because by then we're going to know probably if the Cardinals are in or out of it. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they're in it, and that series decides the division. That's the best case scenario. I will be there if that's the case. I will be at Wrigley that weekend if that's what's going on, or that week, whenever it is. But I don't have an issue with them not playing the Cubs in April. I actually think that's a mark in favor of the schedule makers, because the weather in Chicago and St. Louis sucks in April and mostly May, early May. So I don't have any problem with getting good weather for those games and having them be destinational. That's my opinion. Nathan's only going to pay attention to the Cubs because it would be funny if they blew it during this run. Not expecting that. Yeah, I predicted 18 out of 25, which I didn't do any counting for that, but that started with this Marlins series, and they're 2 for 2 so far. So Allison says, personally, I want to keep Helsley for the rest of the season. Love to see him play, and a great leader in the clubhouse. He is, and I like to watch him pitch as well. I would like the Cardinals to extend him. It'd be more fun, but I don't think they're going to. And so if you're not going to, the business move is unfortunately to trade him. But what I'd love to see is the Cardinals win so many games that they can't even justify it. Because could you get legitimate pieces? We've seen it before. Guys that have been traded, closers especially, that have been traded at the deadline for contending teams, the guys coming back are sometimes elite pieces. Helsley, even on an expiring contract, would be one of the best trade pieces at the deadline the Cardinals have had in years. And so you could potentially get some really interesting pieces back that helps kind of restock things for Chaim Bloom as he's taking over. But the other side of that is like, what if you're in a position to contend and succeed? But I will say this, the Cardinals have been very careful with the workload for Helsley in a way that suggests to me that in their back of their minds, they're making sure that he's healthy. That's a big goal because that affords them the flexibility to do whichever thing they feel like they need to do. I'm just now seeing a couple of these super chats, and I apologize to the grave of Einstein, who mentions that Walker has the third fastest bat speed in MLB, according to Savant, but he just needs to find the ball with the bat. Happens randomly someday or not at all, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a possibility. I've already decided the Cardinals will never lose again. If they do end up losing, I will go into the mountains and become a monk. I hope they have Wi-Fi up in those mountains because I enjoy your comments, the grave of Einstein. So appreciate it and appreciate the super chat, my man. Let's see. Let it be known, 100% agree with Allison. I think that's about the Helsley conversation. OPS plus from Scott and Wynn. Yeah, they've been both above league average. And, like, I think coming in, you would have probably pegged those two as being 8th and 9th. You know, at least I probably would have. I was a bigger believer in the rebound for Walker and Gorman than that's really the only thing I've got egg on my face on is Walker. Because Gorman, I even said as the season was approaching, I was like, I'm not actually as sure about him. Like, I loved drinking the Kool-Aid all spring, and then push came to shove, and I remember there was a podcast right before the season, maybe it was a Sports Hub show, where I was like, yeah, I'm not really buying it. We'll see. I'm hopeful for him. I'm rooting for him. Walker, I really did think we were gonna see him be himself this year, and that hasn't happened. But we should mention that Scott and Wynn doing what they're doing has been just really, really helpful to this team. They're very exciting players. Defense, offense, base running, you get a little bit of everything. And maybe an all-star bid. I think it's going to be tough for Vic unless he gets a more gaudy steals total or an OPS above 800. It's going to be tough. You just don't get it for defense. You get it for the counting stats and for the rate stats. Xavier wants to know my expected win total at this point. Love that question. What I'm going to do is I want to look it up and see if there is like a betting line on that. Not because that's like I want to base my answer off that and just give you that answer, but I'm curious like what, because the line to start the season, if you guys were aware of it at various like sports books or whatever, was like 76.5, 77.5 wins. And I thought, that feels pretty low. And my guess was 83, 84 at the time. So for that to have changed drastically at this point, I don't think it necessarily has. I can't find any betting things anyway, which I don't need it. I was just kind of curious what maybe it would change because is the market starting to buy in on the Cardinals was going to be the reason I wanted to know that. Nevertheless, I said 83, 84 to begin the season. Maybe now I would say, let me not equivocate. Let me just say 84 specifically rather than maybe it's 83. But like 85, 86, 87 doesn't surprise me. 84, 85. Let me say I've gone up just a smidge from before the season. And I was more optimistic than most. I mean, if I said 83, most people said, they're going to stink, they're bad, and all the things that I saw. Another thing I talked about on Twitter today with Caleb, who has great Cardinals thoughts, was kind of talking about this notion of, their pitching plan has worked out, and I was a skeptic of it. The fact that everybody was wanting to see like Michaelis DFA'd or released or Matz like in spring, Fetty should be traded. I was like, I think you guys, I don't get where any of this is coming from. I know they've got too many starters. Guess what? Starters get hurt. And the Cardinals kept their depth because they're paying the guys anyway. They might as well see what it looks like. And so they did that. And they're grateful that they did, I'm sure, because Michaelis has probably been better than expected outside of one game in Boston. Fetty has been about what expected. Palante, maybe about what expected. Maybe a little lesser than I was hoping to see from Palante, but he's had a good outing his last time. Fetty, I mentioned Fetty. It's one of those, and Liberatore obviously has been better than expected. Steven Matz, we haven't really seen him because he's been in the bullpen. It's not been the same. He's been fantastic, obviously, but like from a starter perspective, that's not been his role. But all the starting pitching injuries in the minors has made it to where, like, you're glad you've got all these guys around right now. Because now if you lose Michaelis, sure, McGreevy comes up. Everybody wants to see him. He's worthy of being seen. But then what happens with one more injury after that? And like, how many summers have you watched Cardinal baseball and have seen 2 starter injuries? It happens almost every year. And so they're built for that in a way that they wouldn't have been if they'd said, Michaelis, let's just pay him to go away. It was never something that made sense to me. And Cardinals fans were pretty critical, you know who you are out there, of the Cardinals for not just bringing McGreevy up and kicking Michaelis to the curb. And it's like, had they done that, they'd be in a lot tighter of a spot right now. So I think there's a lot of times where Cardinals fans, I think it's a very passionate fan base, there will be some revisionist history of, or like hindsight, hindsight clairvoyance, where you say, the Cardinals should have done this last year, and they'd be in a such better spot. But we couldn't have known that then, and it's fair to like operate with what you're working with at the time that you make those claims. I think this is the same concept in reverse, where at this point, everybody who was saying they should DFA Michaelis, had they done that, they'd be in a lot tighter spot. Maybe their rotation would be better because McGreevy could outperform him. But I think the depth of the whole thing matters too. It's a long summer. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But to answer Xavier's question, my expected win total, I'm around 84, 85, which is up slightly from the beginning of the season. I want to rip through a few of these comments that I got on the YouTube post that I made earlier tonight, just letting everybody know I'd be doing this. Mark wants me to guess the win streak. He says 13. I say they won't win both games tomorrow. I'd be very surprised to see them sweep the Phillies. So 10 is probably the cap for me. Hope I'm wrong. I mean, it's more fun to do these shows when everybody's in a great mood. Mark also asked what management does with Gorman and Walker. We've talked a lot about that, I think, already tonight. Team BIGV wants to know who I like at number 5 in the draft for the Cardinals. What types of pitchers, hitters would you like to see them target? I'm okay with a high school shortstop. Like, there's a lot of good high school shortstops. I think that's okay. I think this is the time to swing big because you're not going to be drafting at number 5 ever again, hopefully. And you might as well swing big. Will they do the opposite of that and take like a safe college pick and doesn't have upside, but he's got a high floor? Yeah, they probably will. I don't think they should. Like, be willing to take a swing. It's not to say that if they draft that guy, I'm going to, not like the pick, but I think they should be willing to take a swing. If a pitcher like Jamie Arnold, I think is the kid's name, out of Florida State, if I'm not mistaken, if he falls to 5, like, I'm okay with the Cardinals taking a big arm too. Lefty out of Florida State, I would be okay with that. I just don't really know what the board is going to look like. We'll talk more draft stuff, though, as it approaches, as it gets closer. Samuel wanted to know in that same comment section, buyers, sellers, or stay the course, and do I have a farm report? I do not have a farm report tonight. Eshawn Henderson was throwing for Springfield. I could look. I'm not going to play the music because I don't know how to do that on the live streams. But I could look and see what Eshawn Henderson was up to. Springfield won 7-2. So, I'm looking this box score up as I talk to you. I have not seen it. Have not been aware of it. 4 2/3, 2 runs, 7 Ks for Henderson. He's got a 2.40 ERA. The Memphis rotation is hurting. They got like 2 starters. And I'm counting the second one just because Bedell is a Mizzou guy. They just don't have a lot. And so at some point, would you like to see somebody from AA come up? Yes. How realistic is that to happen soon? I don't know, because they have been very much monitoring the pitch counts and the innings from those guys. So I don't know if they're ready as an organization to necessarily do that. It looks like we've also got some topics from Twitter. I put out a large, cast a wide net, as they say. So we'll read a couple of these comments from Twitter, and then we'll wrap with some of your guys here on YouTube. A scenario where the Cardinals try to trade Walker at the deadline and move Donnie to the outfield. Who do I think will have more value at the deadline between Fetty and Matz? That's a question from Bob Bill. Matz, I think, will have more deadline at value at the deadline. I think Fetty will have regular amounts of starting pitching value, and I think there will be a team interested. I think Matz could be like very compelling because teams could dream on the role for him on a playoff roster. He could do a few different things for you. They could try to move Walker at the deadline. I don't think it'll happen. I don't know if they've got the gumption, if they got the stones. Not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it would be bold to do it. I actually think a bold trade deadline would be the best thing for the Cardinals, to make a few different moves. Like, still, maybe you trade Helsley and get a package for him, but you still do other things to try to improve your standing in the present day without, targeting just short-term contracts that are expiring. But make some interesting baseball trades. That could be a fun way to do it at the deadline. Thomas wanted to know if I think we'll see an attendance jump at the next homestand if the winning keeps up. And the answer to that is yes. If the winning keeps up, I do think you'll see that. And man, some of these other topics, Brandon put some great questions out here. I have no idea on Quinn Matthews. I was told he was throwing again. Or I shouldn't say I was told. I heard someone was told. I heard from another media guy that he's throwing again, but I'm not 100%. I don't know. And I think when we see him, we see him. That's going to be the deal. The next prospect called up, I don't have. I want to save some of Brandon's questions, I think, for another video because he put a lot of thought into some of these. So because we're 45 minutes into this thing, that might be the way that I do it. Babe Truth wants to know if we trade Helsley, is there a chance we could see Isringhausen brought back to close games? I don't think so. I think that ship has probably sailed. Donovan is a hitting title contender for Pete's sake. I think he could be. Yeah. Fetty will indeed be a free agent, but he could be traded at the deadline. So we'll see what happens there. Tyler requesting pictures from Grave of Einstein if he does in fact become a monk. So that's fun. Ethan saying boss is reviewing a marketing opportunity. Get back to me this week. So hey, you may just find a new marketing opportunity for b-schaeff Daily. Ethan, appreciate you, my brother, and we'll continue to be in touch for sure. Yeah, if you got marketing opportunities and you want to join up with the partnership on b-schaeff Daily, we are open for business, as they say. Was that the Mosaic line? Is he who said open for business? I can't remember. I kind of mix up some of the different things that are said. Anyway, Charlie convincing that Arenado wants to leave, obvious in his body language. Time to end this craziness with this guy. I actually don't agree with that. I think his body language of tagging up from first to second to try to do anything he can to win and immediately telling the dugout, I'm safe, challenge it. I thought his body language has been great this year, myself personally. Can Molina not come and help Herrera? Molina's not a part of this. He's not employed by the Cardinals. If he is, it's a name only. He's doing his own thing, and that has been true the entire way. I know they said he was coming last year, never showed up. Don't expect him to. I think he's keeping his distance, and we'll kind of see what may come in the future. Yachty does have a son that's playing high-level baseball in Austin, Texas, and so, I think that's a priority for Yachty right now. So, no, I don't think that's going to happen. Chewy, though, says that Herrera should be a DH because they need the bat. Contreras has 2 outs above average, which is maybe first among first basemen. A little typo there, but yeah, I mean, he's been good. Diving catch he had the other night was very impressive. No doubt about that. Oh, here we go. Do we see Weatherholt in 2025? Pending trade deadline fire sale that includes Arenado. I'm going to say we do not see Weatherholt. There was a moment in time where I was leaving open the possibility that you could, because his numbers were so darn good. But he's come back down to earth a little bit at Springfield. Had a 755 OPS coming into today, did JJ, and they scored 7 runs. So let's check and see if he was part of that. He was 2 for 4, runs scored, RBI, not a homer. He had 2 doubles though. OPS is up to 790. Like, I think if he can continue to rake and rise and look good, he'll be in Memphis by midseason or so. Like, that's possible if he can earn that promotion. But from there, I just don't know if it gets to the point. Like, there's a lot of other ducks in the row. I would be surprised by it at this point. But I won't say 0% chance. It's up to him, though. He can force the issue. I think there's still a world in which he could do that. All right, we've been close to 45, 50 minutes here. We're going to be wrapping up things soon. Checking out to see up. We already showed that from the Grave of Einstein. We can show it again. Good bat speed. Walker's just got to put bat to ball. What sentiment that you see Cardinals fans having confuses you the most? That's a fun question. I mean, the notion that this was ever a rebuild. I know that you have to be paying close attention to the messaging to understand it, because it was on its surface maybe a little bit contradictory. Because people say, well, if it's a transition year, rebuild year, why isn't McGreevy in the rotation? It's deeper than that. It's like I explained, because you have to understand the depth issues, and you have to understand protecting yourself against things going wrong. There's a lot to me that makes sense about that. So that's one thing that I feel like Cardinals fans are not super in tune with, that I feel like it makes sense in my head what they're doing. Maybe that makes me like a homer that's just buying the company line. But the way they've handled their pitching this year, maybe nobody has a question about it anymore because it's been so obviously correct. It's been perfect. Other than I wanted to see Matz get a longer look in the rotation, and there just hasn't been room for it. So, that is what it is. But that's maybe the biggest thing for me is just people kind of misunderstanding why they did what they did with their pitching. When they said, well, it's going to be a retool or a transition. Where's McGreevy? That's sort of my thought on that. Is like, yeah, you'll see McGreevy. McGreevy is still going to make a dozen or more starts in the big leagues this year, I think. I keep banking on an injury, and there hasn't been one. So there's a rarity. Count your lucky stars for right now that's been true. Grave of Einstein wants to know what the expected win total question. 163 games, Manfred finds out every other team cheated. Cardinals get a free win in all those games. The extra win is rewarded as an apology. That could happen, I guess. Manfred's got bigger fish to fry. He ended up taking Pete Rose off the ineligible list today. That's interesting stuff. My expected win total is like 84, 85. Ethan says 89 would probably make the playoffs. I agree that it would. I definitely think that it would, at least with a wild card by the time it's all said and done. But we'll see. Samuel says he's at 86. The Brewers lost. That's from Chris, so there you go there. Libby has been added to my fantasy team, so if he starts blanking the bed, it's the grave of Einstein you have to blame. Yeah, he's been really good. I don't think there's a risk of you jinxing him. And there's no such thing as a jinx anyway. Doesn't exist. It's not a thing. His performance will be dictated by his performance and nothing else. If the games happen tomorrow, would you want to see or would you expect an extended relief stint for Mats? Maybe so. Yeah, we'll see. I don't think they'll sweep the doubleheader, though. No, I think they'll win one of the two. And that's interesting because they've been sweeping a lot of doubleheaders recently. So we'll see. Samuel likes the 102-mile-per-hour high school lefty. Yeah, he's out of Illinois, kind of central Illinois, I believe. And I saw some mock drafts where he's like not going top 10. I don't know why that would be. Dude throws 102 and he's in high school. But, yeah, he's interesting too. I think the Cardinals, maybe they're drafting too high to take him, though. I don't know. Paco mentions that he heard me talking about Robert Jr. this morning. I get the risk, but, man, he'd look good in the middle of the lineup if they're contending at the deadline. I'm not saying do that, but that is a challenge trade where it's like, hey, Robert has White Sox pay some of the contract down for that salary this year, and the Cardinals figure out the team option for next year. And, like, would you trade Walker for Robert? Probably not, but maybe you would because the Cardinals are 12 games above 500, and you put him in your two-hole, and you talk about speed and athleticism. I just would rather see Jordan Walker pan out, but I think it's an interesting conversation. So I brought it up today on the show with Randy Carricker. Okay, we're close to an hour. I'm wrapping things up. Ishan, not Ivan, Ishan. And it looks like Ixan, I-X-A-N, but it's pronounced Ishan. Okay, yeah, he said, I can't wait to see Ishan in the majors. I hope we do someday as well. Allison wants to know, we're just kind of rapid firing the rest of this pod. Allison wants to know Leahy's role in 2026. I'm still convinced he comes to Jupiter with a chance to be a starter. I really do believe that. Now, granted, if they trade Helsley and they still find a way to push for the playoffs and he's like your closer, maybe he stays your closer. I don't know. He's certainly got the slow heartbeat that you need to be a closer. But I like him as a starter potentially. He has a really good pitch mix. I would love to see it. Matz has low-key been the best Cardinals starter this season. I would hate to see him relegated to relief at this point, but that's what they're doing. So we'll see. Micah, I'm going to end on this one. My starting five for 2026 is so difficult, but I would say feel very good about Liberatore, feel pretty good about Palante. Hopefully the performance stays strong, but feel pretty good about that. McGreevy, I would say in order of expectation, Libby, I would guarantee he's in there if he's healthy. Libby, number one. Number two would be McGreevy. I'm pretty confident he'll be in there. Graceffo is interesting because he might turn into a good short burst reliever as well, where they don't move him back. But like it won't be Fetty, it won't be Michaelis, it won't be Matz. It may not be Sonny Gray, depending on the way the rest of this season goes. So, we'll see with that. But I'll go Libby. I'll say Sonny is still here, and I'm not super confident in that. But Sonny, Libby, Palante, McGreevy, Leahy. I'll go Leahy as my number five. That might not be like the popular take, but that's what I'm thinking. This individual says it was 80 at the beginning of the season, and he knows because he bet the over. I'm just telling you it was 77.5 at the start of the season. I looked like the day of the season. So anyway, it would never be just 80. It would be always and a half is the way the betting markets work. Anyway, that's going to do it for this edition of the show. It's been close to an hour. It's been a lot of fun. Quinn hopefully will be knocking at the door next year. Samuel, good point on that. But that's going to do it for this edition of B-Schaeff Daily and B-Schaeff Daily Live. If you missed any of today's episode, you can find the audio posted on Spotify as soon as like the next 20 minutes. I'm going to try to get that up. So appreciate y'all who tuned in for the live stream. Do these when we can. Make sure if you like live content to be able to comment as we go. Sports Hub STL. I'm doing a lot of their shows, pre-games, post-games, all kinds of stuff all summer long. So check them out and support that channel as well. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.